I really had to go, okay, I'm burning the list. I'm really surrendering to what is for my highest good. And what I'm not compromising on is my values. I'll ditch these non-negotiables about like how much money he needs to make and how tall he needs to be and really stick to my values. And one of my number one values was growth. I had been in enough relationships to know there's a beautiful honeymoon period, which is all great. And there's fireworks and there's a chemistry. But what matters most is like when the shit hits the fan, who's going to sit in it with you and figure it out? And someone without a growth mindset and someone who isn't like open to those conversations and that work, I knew was going to be a dead end for me, no matter how good the chemistry was.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. Today, I'm talking about love and desire and partnership with my friend, Christine Hassler, who's been on the show before. She's a master coach. She's a spiritual psychologist. She's a facilitator, and she's a speaker with 20 years of experience. She's also a best-selling author of 3 books. I've known her for many years. I've been on her podcast a bunch of times, which is called Over It and On With It, where she coaches people live on the show, but she also interviews people, which I've been on. And we were friends when she was sort of going through this process of wanting to be partnered. And I was really in the front row of this, watching this amazing process unfold. And her love story is she and her husband, who's also been on my show, just epic. And now they have a daughter. And anyway, so we talk all about if you're looking to be partnered and you're not, what are some of the things that you can do to change that in your life from a healthy place, not from a place of suffering and not from a place of lack. She also has a 3-day, basically like a workshop, a free workshop coming up. And we're going to give you the link to that. I think you can go to, cause I'm an affiliate for this, terricole.com/queen is where you can go to sign up for a 3-day free workshop, just giving you all kinds of tips and strategies about love, because who doesn't want more love as we're coming upon Valentine's Day? Anyway, I hope that you enjoy this interview with Christine Hassler as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. I'm so excited, you guys, to have Christine Hassler back. She's a frequent flyer on the Terri Cole Show. Welcome back, my friend.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be back. We go way back, so it's always fun to.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
All right, so many things to talk about. You and I we're always kind of right on the same path of the stuff that we're excited to talk about, but we're both always excited to talk about love.
Yes.
And partnership and all of those things. So before we get into any of that, let's talk a little bit about, I would love for you to share with us sort of your own backstory. If you were like a Marvel movie character, what would your origin story be?
There's a few origin stories. And I think that's true for so many of us, right? Like the older we get, the more origin we have because life just takes different paths. But the short story is I was, HFC, highly driven, compensating for my insecurities and lack of self-love and self-awareness and the sense of self, by overachieving and being good at everything and a perfectionist at things and things I weren't good at. I just didn't do, not good at singing, not going to do it. Not a good skier, not going to do it. That was my whole MO. And moved out to Hollywood and became an agent. So we have that in common as well. And was the youngest ever female agent in my group. Really just, hit kind of a peak level at 24, making a lot of money, dating the head of a movie studio, had this great job and still not happy. I'd been on antidepressants since I was 11. By my 20s, I was also on some benzos to manage my anxiety. And that's just how I thought I had to live. I had always felt like a spiritual longing, a curiosity about astrology and intuition and just more what I would have called woo-woo stuff back then. But I never really pursued it because I liked certainty and I liked proof and I liked the intellectual. And I don't know if I liked it or that's just my adaptive strategy, is where it felt safer. But I couldn't deny that I kept getting these great things in life, but it wasn't taking care of the huge void that I felt inside of me. And at the ripe age of 25, I ended up getting broken up with by my fiance, left my job, was estranged from my family. Did my health hit like a really bad level, mental and physical health and emotional and spiritual, all of it. And that was a turning point for me. I found myself on the bathroom floor, the classic bathroom floor moment, and just realized the common denominator was me. And it was the first time I actually didn't go into victim I actually went into like, all right, well, okay, let's do something about it. And that was the turning point for me. That's when I really got into coaching and found my first coach and just started to see and think about life differently. And it was a huge unraveling process. I mean, that's just one of many stories. Got divorced in my early 30s, ended up meeting my husband just around 40, ended up having a baby at 44, which was a huge, life change. And so I've for someone who was addicted to certainty, that's been one of my greatest lessons is that, I wrote a book called Expectation Hangover, right? Because I really saw that, wow, there's your plan and then there's life. And I would find great comfort in the plan. And so much of my inner work has finding comfort within, comfort in the not knowing, comfort in the discomfort, and releasing my tight grip. And motherhood has really like brought this in my face, releasing my tight grip on certainty and control and needing to know and needing to fix any perceived problem. Like it's okay if things aren't okay. Like that for my nervous system has been, whew. Like if I'm not okay, if someone else is okay, like it can still be okay. What? That has been a huge mind-blowing change for me.
So how do you regulate your nervous system when your nervous system, all of our nervous system loves certainty. We want it. Yeah. So there's lots of different ways. So how do you sort of emotionally self-regulate around uncertainty or being not okay or someone else being not okay?
Well, there's many ways. And I think what's so great about nervous system regulation is there's a lot of people talking about it and you have to find the one that works for you. So I'll share one that works for me and then I'll share a couple others that are also in my toolbox that tend to work for people. Because I have a feeling a lot of your listeners are like you and I, and I'll speak for myself, may have a tough inner critic and a perfectionist and high standards, and also probably have done a lot of work on themselves. So oftentimes when I get dysregulated, there's also a judger going, oh my God, you've done so much work. Why are you dysregulated? So there's the dysregulation and then there's a story about the dysregulation. So I have found that the most regulating energetic for me to go into when I'm dysregulated is compassion. And so when I'm feeling dysregulated, I'll give an example. My daughter, she never has really loved sleep. I love sleep. Karma has it that she doesn't like to sleep, and it's just been my journey. And yes, a couple of days ago, she was in her room and she was so exhausted and she's fighting her nap. Mommy, I'm not tired. I'm like, you're so tired. Go to sleep. Like you are tired. And I found myself getting dysregulated. And then I could feel that judger coming in. Like, have you ever done an ounce of personal growth work? This is your daughter. Like, she's a blessing. She's just 2 years old. She doesn't have a prefrontal cortex. You're getting so all of that you should know better, which is that voice is highly dysregulating. Yeah. So I find that if I put my hands on my heart and I go, of course you're frustrated. You were up with her last night. She's not going to sleep. Yeah, of course. This is a really normal, okay reaction. Yeah. And the minute I go into that compassion and validation, it's not a scapegoat. It's not like, oh, just, be frustrated, dysregulated mom and take it on your kid. But it eases my nervous system because the little voice inside that thinks I'm doing something wrong, which is going to dysregulate me further, calms down. So I have found, and even people that, may get nervous before an event and try to talk themselves into not being nervous. I'm someone who in the past struggled with panic attacks after some mold poisoning, and people would be like, you just need to breathe and calm down. I'm like, no, Leroy, I know I need to calm down.
Thanks.
Thanks for that great tip. But I have found that moving into acceptance with what is has been incredibly regulating for me. So if we can just anytime anyone's dysregulated, if you can just go, of course you're nervous about this speaking thing. Of course you're nervous to post this. Of course you haven't been on a date in 5 years and you're going of course. And it's okay. Because when we try to get out of the emotion, it just dysregulates us more.
Yeah. I love that so much that, Christine, that's the whole voice when you say, of course, when you're like, it makes sense. I have a therapist who, was talking about some dysfunctional thing I was doing and being very hard on myself about it and being bummed out. And she was like, Terri, it makes sense. Did it make you feel better in the short run? And I was like, yes. And she's like, see? So it's it worked, which is why you did it. or why you do it, but if you don't want to do it, we can talk about that. But there was something about her basically saying, this defense mechanism that you're employing right now makes sense. You make sense. So it's not because you're monumentally broken beyond repair. It's not because you're an idiot. You're seeking relief and it gave you temporary relief. So putting those things together and exactly what you said, it really is turning on that compassion for self, where it's like, you're tired too.
Right.
You need a break too. It's okay to be frustrated and moving on to the next, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there is something that is great. So what other ideas do you have? So I think that one is super helpful for people.
Yeah, that one's super helpful. And just one more piece about that one, so often as kids, when we were dysregulated, we didn't get that validation. And so much of dysregulation is a time travel moment to previous trauma or previous challenge or something in our subconscious. And so when we're doing that, of course, and we're validating the feelings, we're also like, it's kind of a 2-for-1. You regulate and you're doing some inner child healing as well. So that's why it's one of my faves. Other just quick ones are really super simple, like feeling gravity, like feeling the actual earth holding me. I think when we are dysregulated, we're so myopic in the problem, we just get tunnel vision on, whatever the dysregulation is. And if I can feel my feet on the floor, or I can feel the chair holding me, like if everybody just kind of like feels gravity, it's like, wow, like something's holding us like down into this earth. And take it a step farther, like really feel yourself grounded in the earth. That really helps me too. Humming really helps me. Doing really helps me as well. Yep. Bringing myself into the present moment. Those are the more physiological things that I do. But really the one that works on all levels for me is moving into that energetic. And I have to feel it. It can't just be a mental thing. Of course you're feeling this way. It doesn't work until I actually feel the actual compassion for myself and get out of that judgment, because nothing shifts in judgment. Nothing heals in judgment. Nothing regulates in judgment. And so when we can get out of that, it just, we can shift. And I think with all the kind of nervous system, it's a buzzword out there. I just, want to say, like, it's also really normal to be dysregulated. Like, no one really walks, I shouldn't say no one. I'm sure there's some monk somewhere who does it, but I don't know many people who run around regulated 100% of the time. So Agreed. It's like, give yourself some grace as well. Like, you're allowed to be human.
And I think that we have to also make the distinction on what does it mean to be dysregulated. So it doesn't mean we can't have feelings. Right. It means we don't want to get caught in this amplified response, because it can be very paralyzing, right? If we're dysregulated to the point that we're not functioning or that we can't do the next thing. So again, it's for me, the more I stopped running away from my feelings, the more I stopped sort of looking to control other people.
Right.
To avoid my feelings, right? There's all these tricks of the trade when you don't want to feel your feelings that, we find other things to do instead.
Yep.
And becoming more intimate with my more nuanced feelings, like actually getting radically curious about, why am I so upset? What is this feeling? I just had something happen with Vic, which is interesting, but it was like going to something. And I first asked him to come with me, and then I changed my mind. I thought, you know what, it'd be better if I just go by myself. And then I made up this story that you have to understand. He's literally the most mellow Pisces you've ever met, the nicest guy in the world. Like, and he's not someone who is ever like walking around, quote unquote, mad at me for any reason. Like, it's just not his nature. If he has something to say, he says it, but that's it. So I was convinced. I was like, I really think he's mad. So I texted my sister. I'm telling my sister, I really think Vic's mad. And she was like, Terri, he's really not, babe. Like, I promise you, he's really not. You ask him, but he's, she knows him for 27 years. She's like, he's not mad, Terri. Like, that's someone else. And it makes you, for me, the feeling was so real. The fear was so real. Like, I don't want to hurt his feelings, that I love him and I don't want him to feel rejected, and all projection in something else. But being able to just, he came in, this literally just happened today. He came in and was like, oh, I went shopping and I got this thing that you were looking for. And they had it there, this vitamin D liquid, whatever I was looking for. And he was obviously not mad. And it made me realize, like, wow, like all of this stuff, so much of this is an inside job. Mm-hmm. And now my work is too. And, it's not that it's a big deal. These are moments in time. But I do have to think about, who was I afraid was going to be mad at me in childhood? Like, what is this about?
Yeah.
Because it's not about my non-mad Pisces husband. Because he was like, no, of course not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And what happens if that person is mad, right? Then all the bracing starts. Yeah.
Yes. And then what do you do? So I would love to talk a little bit about, I was enamored with your love story. I know your hubs. Mm-hmm. He's been on my show too. But I was so, you and I were good friends prior to you guys meeting. And it was like, I was so, I was enamored with your story. So if you would, share a little bit about your meeting and greeting and story and how you're sharing this with other people.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I got divorced in my early 30s. I can't remember exactly. And it was, we didn't have kids, and it was actually a pretty pleasant divorce. It was just, I called him a journey mate relationship. We just came together, and there were reasons we came together. And then there was this expiration date, and we needed to go on our separate ways, but still really painful, especially, that's the age where everybody's getting engaged and getting married and then starting to have babies. And so when all my friends were doing that in their 30s, I was dating and healing and going, okay, I have one broken engagement and one divorce, and I'm like 33 years old. Like, again, who's the common denominator? Was selectively single for a while and did some deep inner work and really spent time on my career. And then I was really open to dating again. I was really open to calling that person in, and it wasn't going well at all. Like it was crickets, or I'd keep bringing in emotionally unavailable people. And I got a dating coach because I'm a coach, and I'm like, okay, let's do coach. And I did courses and I read books, and nothing was resonating. It kind of felt like when I was having my quarter life crisis and I read the books on the quarter life crisis, and they were good, but they were more like, how do you get the career? How do you decide things? I'm like, no, where's the like inside stuff? Like I know how to do the outside stuff. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna come up with my own program to call this person in, because I would have my list of things I wanted in a person, and people would say, well, Christine, you need to be more realistic. Like that's a lot. And I'd say, well, I'm not asking for anything I'm not. Like I was really clear that I'm not asking for someone to fill this void that I can't fill for myself, or be something that I am not willing to be or am not. So I just cut out all the noise and really put myself on my own. Like I called it becoming the queen. Like I wanted a king. I didn't want a prince or a knight in shining armor. I wanted a king, and I had a definition of what that meant to me. And briefly, it meant someone who like is at the point in his life where he can look out, like he can embrace people in his life. He's not still trying to prove and do all the things and date all the people, and just really like a sturdy sense of who he is. And I was really clear in my dating. I used to be the woman who, I'd meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm not looking for a relationship. And I'd have this voice inside, that will change. I was delusional. What happened is I ended up being kicked out of my dream home by my crazy landlord, and was just a nomad and going, what is going on? And going, wow, this is like, so I did this release kind of ceremony at the end of December. And then January, I find out she's not renewing my lease. And so I'm like thrown into uncertainty, my fave. And I just was like, okay, like this is, I need to burn my list. I need to burn my list and really surrender, because I think a lot of times we try to convince ourselves we're surrendering. Maybe we even get a surrender tattoo or a necklace.
But we're really not.
No,
right?
We still have an agenda. We still have our strong non-negotiables. And bottom line, we're still in fear. Like I was holding on so tightly to what I wanted and how I wanted it to look.
Yeah.
But so much of that was driven by fear. And so, and we can put this in any context, not just relationship, right?
Sure.
And so for me, I really had to go, okay, I'm burning the list. I'm really surrendering to what is for my highest good. And what I'm not compromising on is my values. I'll ditch these non-negotiables about like how much money he needs to make and how tall he needs to be and what kind of, just stuff and like really stick to my values. And one of my number one values was growth, because I'm like,
was
there's growth and is growth.
Yes.
Because I had been in enough relationships to know there's a beautiful honeymoon period, which is all great. And there's fireworks and there's a chemistry. But what matters most is like when the shit hits the fan, who's going to sit in it with you and figure it out? And someone without a growth mindset and someone who isn't like open to those conversations and that work, I knew was going to be a dead end for me, no matter how good the chemistry was.
Yep.
So I ended up meeting Steph because I was at a friend's house. They asked me to come look at a website that they were working on. His face happened to be on the screen. It was like this soul recognition. Thought I knew him, never met him. She said, do you want to be introduced? He lives in Perth, Australia. I'm like, Perth, Australia? I'm in San Diego. Like, could we be more far apart? Nope. It's literally the opposite side of the world. She said, you're both going to be in Europe. I said, find out where he is. Like, I am a queen and I'm calling him my king. And if he's not open to that, I don't want a pen pal. And
right.
She asked him and he said yes. And we had 3 months over WhatsApp where we got to know each other. And it was really great, Terri, because not being in physical proximity, we really got to see how we communicated and like what kind of questions we asked. And then when we met in Greece 3 months later, and I was nervous because I was like, well, am I going to like the way he smells? Like, how, is he going to kiss well? Like, is there going to be anything? And there was. And we moved in together that day and we got married legally 3 months later.
Wow.
So it was fast and furious. And let's see, we met in 2018 and we had our daughter in 2022. And it's been intense, like, especially having a kid, it has challenged us and pushed us. And, we're consistently reinventing the relationship. And probably a year ago, we were kind of like, are we even going to make it? And I actually don't know any couple who hasn't hit that point at some point or multiple points in the relationship. But what I'm so relieved about and what I keep coming back to is like who I was when I called him in and the mindset I had and the clearing I had done. I called in someone who shares that top value, and he has such a willingness to sit with me in the shit and work through it. And that alone has been the lifeline to our marriage, honestly. And I think for women that listen to your show, that is massive. Like,
oh yeah, major.
And the other part, inside of me is when I called him in, I wasn't, we're never like healed and perfect. But I had done enough of my inner work that my actual 40-something self was calling him in. Not my 8-year-old who wanted more of dad's attention. Not my 14-year-old who wanted to date the popular guy. Not my 20-year-old who would fall in love with addicts who she thought she could save. And so I was really calling in from where I am and where I want to go, not from where I've been. And, we help so many women do this now. And subconsciously, they're attracting from where they've been. Even if they think they're not, that's happening. And that doesn't always yield the best results.
Yes, indeed. I think that there's really something about you, the distinction that you just made about calling in from where you are now. Because I think that I have a similar story, different but similar, in that I just really had it with dating before Vic and I got together, and I didn't get married till I was in my mid-30s. But prior to that, I really just had made the distinction, the decision that I no more unexamined minds.
Yes, I love that.
Like, that was an actual thing that I was like, I'm literally not dating someone who hasn't had 20 years of therapy. I don't give a I'll stay single, because exactly what you said is the truth. How will we build? How will we grow and change? I don't plan on staying the same.
Yeah.
So someone who wants me to stay the same or stay small, because I'd had different kind of negative experiences in relationships where people were threatened by my ambition or threatened by my success or threatened by whatever, they wanted me to be smaller than I was. And I knew I'm going to have to meet someone who is so secure in themselves that they're going to be super pumped to be in the front row of the Terri Cole show. And they're going to be so proud and so happy. And I also wanted them to have a big career because I wanted them to have their own show so I could sit in the front row of their show.
Yes.
And be super supportive and super happy.
Yes.
And I never anticipated that you threw out the list. And for me, I accepted and got really good with not getting married. That's what I thought it would be. And I didn't have a lot of family pressure to do so. And I thought, I'm not enough as I am. I'm like a perfectly delicious piece of cake, completely legit.
Yes.
And maybe finding someone to partner with forever would be like some nice icing.
Yes.
But I don't need it per se. And I was already taking care of myself and I was financially secure and all these things where I didn't need it. So it was such an incredibly pleasant surprise when we fell in love because it was very similar. Like I feel like there's a pivot in both of our stories where when I stopped feeling like it was the thing that I needed to legitimize me like as a human being. And when I realized it was a nice to have, but it wasn't a have to have.
Right.
Is when I felt liberated to just be myself in any situation and be open. And then we met through a friend and whatever. And then that was that.
Now 30 years later, here you are, right?
It's literally 27, but still that's a lot.
Well, right. I mean, it's 30. It's close enough.
It is.
Well, and I love what you're saying because, what that similarity in both of our stories, what we were breaking through is our own stuff and also the collective unconscious programming that a woman needs to be chosen. Because if we look at the whole proposal and taking the last name and just like all the things, there's this, and I mean, I believe marriage was even invented so women could be sold as property. So, there's lots of just jumbled up messaging that we pick up both from our own personal experiences and from the collective. And I too was in this place of, I don't need it. But if I was really honest with myself, I wanted it. Not necessarily marriage. And I also wasn't like, I have to have a child either. But I wanted the evolution that relationship brings. And so something that was so important for me, because when I got too much in the energetic of I'm fine just the way I am, I kind of was cut off from my desire a little bit. And so I found this way to be in the longing and have the desire without suffering. Because so many times when we want something, there's suffering because we don't have it. And so it was like this juicy place of, I would love to grow in relationship and I love my life right now. And so that the longing kind of kept me open because when I went into the, like, I don't need it, there was a little bit of an edge, I wasn't completely, it was a little like, hear me roar, I don't need it. And where it got to is, I actually don't need it. But this human experience, this human heart, who I am, really wants to experience that. And that's been something that was key for me for calling in a baby too. When like everybody's like, you're going to try to get pregnant at 43 and have a baby at home at 44. Yeah. I'm yes.
And you did.
And I did. And I was also, I would have had to grieve it if it didn't happen. And I had one pregnancy loss where I really thought it wasn't going to. But I pursued conception with that same embodiment of like, this is my desire and I long for it and I would love it. And I'm not in pain because I don't have it. And that has been such a game changer in my life, the longing without the suffering.
I love that so much. All right. So tell people where they can find you and where they can learn more about what you teach about love.
About all the things. Well, I mean, you can find me, my website, Instagram, my podcast, Over and On With It, which you were on, and people have loved all the interviews that you do. And then since we've been talking so much about relationship, the Be the Queen course, we're going to be teaching it live. We have it as an evergreen course. It's the course that was based on my calling in Steph, because when I met him and people that had been following me for a while were like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, well, it actually wasn't an accident. Like there was actually a process to it. And people were like, how? And so I say we, because my husband and I teach it together, which is also different because, you know, I want women to have that healthy masculine embodiment. And, you know, he can answer questions that I can't because I'm not a man. But we have taught 6 classes since 2019. And of our graduates, over 60% of those who have answered the survey are in relationships. Some are married, some have kids at this point. So it's been really beautiful. And we have a free 3-day workshop coming up in February that you'll link to that we're going to just give some great content teaching you, you know, kind of what archetype you're in that potentially is blocking what you really want, how you can shift that. And I'll be sharing a lot of the things that I did to really, you know, call in my guy.
I love it so much. This was so great. You guys, all the information that you need for that is going to be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing your big, beautiful brain with us today. I so appreciate you.
Oh, I so appreciate you. Thank you.